We'll call the February Sawyer County Board of Supervisors meeting to order, please. Lynn, we'll start with roll call.
Dale Schlueter. Here. Jesse Betcher. Here. Tweed Schumann.
Here.
James Schlender. Here. Mark Hellwig.
Here.
Tom Duffy.
Here.
Bruce Paulson.
Here.
Brian Bissonette.
Here.
Dale Olson. Dawn Pettit.
Dale Olson.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. Here.
Okay, thank you, Lynn.
Dawn Pettit.
Dawn Pettit.
Ron Kinsley. Ron Buckholz.
Present.
Ed Peters.
Present.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Let the record indicate we have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, certification of compliance with open meetings law. Ms. Fitch.
This meeting has been noticed to the members of this board, to the public, and to the news media as required by Section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. The meeting agenda has been presented. We'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone here or on virtual that would like to address the board? We'll give you 3 minutes. You may come up to the mic and state your name, sir.
My name is Timothy James Carroll, local citizen. I didn't hear the meeting agenda, so I apologize. If you could repeat that for me, please. The meeting agenda. What was the topic?
Public comments.
Public comments. Yeah, that's the next one, 6. All right, so public comments. I just have a question for the county board and the supervisors in reference to digital networking. In reference to an email login, as a local citizen, or as any one of us for that matter, what is the legal login for someone to use the internet? I mean, for me, and to comment quickly, I would state that no citizen should be allowed to use the internet without logging in with without their state identification. So, meaning, if I don't have a state ID programmed to my brand new computer, as when you buy one, it usually asks you to program the email. It's the first thing it asks you to do and go on the internet. If I don't use my state ID, my computer should not be programmed. It should be mandatory for every user within the network to program their computer using their state identification and then their social security number for a password. Otherwise, it shouldn't be legal. That's something I would like to address to the county and to the city, especially using the reference of my digital history. If one had it for law enforcement, I mean, I think it creates a problem within the network, creates viruses. It definitely makes a problem for programming and changing from one device to another, and then identifying the citizen when need be, especially when you file your own information with the government. You know, they talk about identity theft. I mean, I'm 20 years behind schedule here, so forgive me for missing class in high school. But identity theft, I think, is a false reality within most purposes. I don't think anyone really needs to steal anyone else's identification. I think we all would like to have the sense of security. So I would like for law enforcement, you know, those within the county, and not even just in Sawyer County, but across the states, to start taking control of the networking and making it mandatory for the user to program their computer using their state ID and social security number. Thank you.
Okay, sir, if you can finish up. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Dawn Pettit is here, Lynn. Okay, is there anyone else for public comment?
Mr. Chairman, this is Dan Murcell. I'd like to be recognized.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Dan Murcell. I'm the owner of a hangar out at the airport. I'm here this evening not only representing myself, but the Hayward Hangar Owners and Pilots Association. I'd like to briefly introduce the members of the Hangar Owners and Pilots Association. Many people think of us as individuals who can afford to pay whatever's necessary to enjoy their avocation. What I can tell you is that we're just like you. Our planes go faster than your motorcycles or boats, but that may be the only thing that is different. The main thing I want to leave you with is we care for our community, and not only the aviation community, but the community at large. We support the Civil Air Patrol so they can continue their mission. At the request of the Sheriff's Department, I've personally searched for missing fishermen on the CHIP. And like others, I have introduced youngsters from our community to the many different facets of aviation by giving them free airplane rides. The last point I'd like to make is our support for the local community's economic well-being that results from aviation-oriented activities that bring visitors into the county. Now, the real reason I'm here is that we have 4 general concerns with the resolution regarding airport hangar lease policy that's on the agenda tonight. These concerns are the motion from the Public Works Committee on which the proposed resolution is based was developed in a closed session and therefore without public input. As of earlier today, the specific wording of this motion has not yet been made public, thus making it impossible to determine if the proposed resolution properly represents this motion. No apparent consideration was given to the amortization period of investment in hangars by their owners. For example, as a homeowner, you generally pick the length of term for your mortgage that makes your mortgage payments more affordable. Why is the proposed resolution shortening the overall term of the lease from 30 to 20 years? The proposed lease terms appear to have been set without consideration of several factors, and these are: the county's expense for originating or amending the lease is proposing a $250 increase. Why? The proposed lease rate should reflect the expenses associated with maintaining access to leased parcels. Snow plowing, mowing, taxiway, maintenance, other things like that. Was this analysis done and completed? And finally, no comparison of lease rates, now proposed as 15 cents a square foot, which is a 50% increase over the existing rate. No comparison has been made to other similar airports in northwestern Wisconsin. For example, Rice Lake, Ashland, Rusk County, Burnett County, Price County, Menominee, and Superior. Fourth, the resolution contains numerous instances of ambiguous language. Examples are transferability of the lease, what constitutes a lease amendment, what conditions trigger the commencement or origination fee, what specific inflation index will be used and how is it to be applied to adjust the lease rate. Clear definitions of these terms are important to all stakeholders to avoid interpretation issues now and in the future. And
Okay, sir,
finally,
can
as
you
a
wrap it up,
result of
please?
all these questions and issues, and because time is not an issue, since I understand Wisconsin law treats an expired lease as a month-to-month lease, I'm asking the county board to table any action at this meeting associated with the proposed resolution and to commit to holding a public hearing to allow all hangar owners and other taxpayers an opportunity to provide necessary and important input that will allow for resolution that fairly and properly addresses the requirements and concerns of all involved parties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, anyone else for public comment? Mr. Colson, anybody else online?
Yes, Mr. Olson has his hand up, and then there's a Tony Kent.
Let's go to Tony Fent. Mr. Fent? Okay. All right, if not, Mike, we'll move on then. Okay.
How about now? How about now?
Okay, there you are. Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Fent, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay, my name's Tony Fend. I'm a hangar owner also. My current lease agreement expires in September of 2021. the paragraph in my current lease states under paragraph 4 rent, the lessee agrees to pay to the lessor for the use of the premises, rights and easements herein described a yearly rental of 10 cents per square foot for a total annual charge of $576.60 payable on execution of this lease on the anniversary date of this lease of each year thereafter during the term of this lease, except that the rental amount shall be renegotiated every 5 years from the date of the original contract. Any rate adjustment shall be reasonable and shall not exceed the average of the inflation rate during the preceding 5 years. I don't believe the proposed rate increase is of the same spirit as my lease. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anyone else for public comment? Mr. Coulson? All right, then we'll move on to number 7.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if I'm the only one or if all county board members received a knit Berkey hat in the mail. But I'm just saying that I know the counties association says we can accept some kind of gratuity up to $5. I did go on their website. They don't list those hats. I don't know if they're more than $5. I would assume they are. And, you know, after all the things that have gone on with the Berkey over the course of the last few years, you know, we basically got a grant for them, rezone land for them.
Mr. Olson, we're on public comment, though. We have to go with the agenda, okay?
Can I not?
So I've got to move with this,
The
all
member
right?
of the public, Mr. Chairman, I want to broach this just very quickly and be done with
All
it.
right, all right. Right.
That is on the
Could we-
agenda?
Yeah, could we do that at the
If
end of
it's
the
on the
agenda, other
agenda,
matters for discussion?
it did not say it on the agenda. So if it's on the agenda, I will acquiesce till then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Okay. Anyone else, public comment? Yes, sir, Mr. Van Etten.
Mr. Chairman, I just want you to know I'm here, and I wasn't on roll call.
Thank you. Did you get that, Ms. Fitch?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Van Etten's here. He's been here. All right, thank you, Chuck. All right, moving on then to number 7, approval of minutes from our previous meeting, January 21, 21. Mr. Helwig.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, Mr. Buckholz.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Buckholz to approve the meeting minutes as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on into number 8, appointments. We'll start with our Land Information Council. We've got an appointment of a Rachel Thompson to the Land Information Council. So at this
Motion
time, I would
approved,
entertain a
Mr.
motion. Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Olson to approve. Mr. Kinsley? Second by Mr. Kinsley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, going on to letter B, Sawyer County Resource Center appointment. We have approved Mr. Dale Schleter to sit on that board as a Sawyer County Board representative. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve that appointment. Mr. Buckholz.
I make a motion to approve. Mr.
I'll
Schleter
second.
To sit on the Sawyer County Resource Center.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duffy. Second by Ms. Pettit. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to 8C, District 4, Sawyer County Board Supervisor and Standing Committee appointments. I have interviewed many applicants for this position, and very good applicants, but I have chosen Miss Stacy Hessel to represent Supervisor in District 4. Ms. Hessel will also sit on the Economic Development Standing Committee, Finance, and an alternate on the Zoning Committee. She will also sit as a Sawyer County representative on the Sawyer County LCO Economic Development Committee. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve my appointment. Mr. Howard.
I'll make that appointment.
Make a motion.
Second. Thank you, Ms. Pettit. Second by Mr. Helwig. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Ms. Hessel. Yep. Congratulations.
Please raise your right hand. I, Stacy Hessel, having been appointed to the office of County Board Supervisor, District 4, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Right up here. Stacy, right behind Mark. Congratulations. You know, I could have you sit. Stacy, if you're more comfortable, you could sit right up here. Yep. Yeah. Come on
And
up
that's your
there.
packet right there, Stacy? That's your packet at the microphone.
Okay, congratulations, Ms. Hessel. Yep. Okay, moving on then to number 9. Zoning Committee Chair Report. Mr. Buckholz.
Mr. Chair, there's nothing to report because we haven't had a committee meeting since the last county board meeting, so there's nothing to report at this time.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, moving on. Number 10, Economic Development UW Extension, Mr. Schlender.
Mr. Chairman, the committee met on Monday, February 8th. There's not too much to report, other than the fact that we're excited and we're gearing up for the American Birkebeiner. I don't know if Mr. Pop was going to be present to provide a report.
Yep. I was going to have Mr. Duffy say something when you're done.
Couldn't see him through his mask, so Mr. Pop, if you want to come up and share the news.
Thank you. Mr. Duffy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next week, we celebrate the 47th anniversary of the 3rd largest ski race in the entire world and the largest ski race in North America. That's just huge for Bayfield County and Sawyer County. And this year, because of the pandemic, the Brookie will be different than any other year. So we've got Mr. Pop here tonight, who's the executive director, to kind of show us the highlights and what we can expect in the next week of the Birkebeiner. And he has an enormous job running this organization and keeping the prominence where it is. So I'd like to yield the floor to Mr. Pop.
Okay. Mr. Pop?
Thank you. As you pointed out, the Berkey 2021 will be significantly different. Normally we have about 13,000 skiers that are here during the week. This year we had about 8,000 registrations, so significantly less, of course. Many people are a bit, they're not racing right now. We're expecting about 5,000 that will be here next week over the 5 days. Some have chosen to ski in their home courses virtually. Working with Ms. Lyons and Sarah Wortman in Bayfield County have come up with a plan to ski over 5 days. And during that time, unfortunately, there will be no spectators at the start and finish line, which is the same. But what we do know is many of them will be here during that period, over that period of time, looking for things to do, and certainly are excited, I think, to spend time doing things that they normally wouldn't. There is no busing this year, there's no tents this year, so it's a bit of a different event, obviously. That said, they're going to start at the start line where they normally start, and they're going to actually finish there because they're going to drive themselves there. And other than that, the biggest changes are certainly there won't be much support on the course. They're all actually going to be on their own, essentially having to carry their own water and things like that to reduce the interaction with volunteers at the aid station. So that said, have gotten a fair amount of input from, through Sawyer County, the record, people wanting to know what they can do, where they can go, and the record has put together restaurant lists and working with the chamber and the bid district to work on things that we can do when you're not skiing, because many of them know, again, they're not going to be skiing the whole time they're here. So it is interesting. It's only one of 5 of the events that's happening around the world. One just happened 2 weeks ago in Italy, and then one in Poland just a week ago. So that's the gist of the race itself. And I'm happy to answer the question about the hats if you want it as well. I don't know if you wanted to broach that. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be very different. I think people are excited to be here and understanding it'll be different, but that's the story.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pop. Appreciate it. Very exciting week for us. Okay.
That concludes the report for economic development, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. All right, then we'll move on to number 11, Public Safety Committee Chair Report. Mr. Schlender.
Mr. Chairman, the committee met on Thursday, February 4th, and it was a full meeting. Some of the standard reporting is the jail is operating at about 85% capacity. The number of calls for 911 and other officer-involved incidences is also increased. Not a normal spike, it's just that they're busy, and the weather and things notwithstanding. Before you tonight, we have a couple of different items for a business. First one is a joint powers agreement. This is I don't know if it's an annual event, but it's definitely an event that needs to happen. Essentially what this is an agreement between Sawyer County's dispatch and the local municipalities so that we can ensure that we've got proper call-out ability and dispatch ability for fire, ambulance, law enforcement, and this requires an agreement with the municipalities. And so with that, I think I need a motion for the county
make
to
the motion.
approve these. I'd like to almost wait until I was done, but okay. So I would need a motion to approve these agreements and then invite the municipalities then to sign them, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. I've got a motion by Ms. Pettit, Mr. Hellwig.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Pettit, second by Mr. Hellwig to approve the joint power agreements between Sawyer County 911 and the municipalities. Is there any further discussion?
It is also an annual thing that we do for Mr. Schlender's
Okay, thank you, Ms.
question.
Pettit. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, sir.
Next on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council update. The council met on February 16th. We're making actually tremendous progress. We just finished up a memorandum of understanding with the tribe, which will be coming back through the Public Safety Committee at its next meeting and then being presented to the full board for ratification. The tribe has increased its contribution for the financial operations for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. We have hired Justice Point to provide for services for people, for citizens who are in the criminal justice system, trying to work on alternatives to incarceration, as well as programming, as well as trying to get other services, including CCS for both the Sawyer County and for the tribe. We are going to be inviting the tribe's judge to serve. Our judge serves on this committee, as well as other stakeholders in the criminal justice system. That concludes the CJCC update. Finally, for consideration, there's 2 items of information. One is a resolution. The other is information in support from the judge. This is a resolution coming from Sawyer County. It's a request from our court system to address the state legislature to address what is the fees that are being assessed for probate. Currently, our fee structure is such that it creates a financial hardship for our court to handle probate and other matters. And so this resolution is a request of the state legislature to equalize, and so that our county operates with the same funding schedule as other counties similarly situated. If there's any questions about this, there's a supporting letter from our probate clerk, Shannon Kraus, as well as supporting information from Judge Yackel. So if there is, I mean, questions can come through the motion, but I'm looking for a motion to approve this resolution so that we can send that back on.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. Mr. Duffy?
I move we approve.
Okay. Mr. Hellwig?
I'll second.
Okay. Got a motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Hellwig to approve the resolution requesting the Wisconsin Legislature revise Chapter 814 to make filing fees consistent between the clerk of court and register and probate. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Very well done. Okay, moving on to number 12, Public Works Committee Chair Report. Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The highways are in good winter driving conditions, so they must be doing a good job out there. Maintenance department's busy keeping the building clean. We're worried about the virus, and that I've heard that no one has come down with it that works here, so they must be doing a good job. The third thing we have is a resolution for the Sawyer County Hangar renewals, discussion and possible action. Refer maybe to Rebecca, but if these people are stating they have some concerns, it's not going to bother me to wait another month to listen to their concerns at the public safety meeting. I know Derek is here. Is it going to bother you much?
I suppose Mr. Hobbs not. I suppose I could just say a couple paragraphs about what we're at in the process. I don't know if the committee wants to hear it tonight, if the board wants to hear stuff tonight.
Well, Mr. Kinsley, that was my question, if this is time sensitive or not. So apparently not. Derek, I would welcome a brief explanation here, please. Good with that, Mark?
You've been quiet tonight. This board's pretty familiar with leases at the
Sir,
airport.
can you introduce yourself to
Oh,
everyone,
yeah.
please?
Derek Leslie, airport manager, contracted airport manager at Hayward Aviation. This board's familiar with the leases. We've done quite a bit of it in the last year. There's 25 hangar leases at the airport. Some of the hangar owners have voiced their opinions here tonight. I've been working with Rebecca and Tom about a lot of the hangar leases of the 25. There's three major issues. Some of the 30-year leases original have expired. And then there's 20-year leases where 10-year renewals were not exercised. And then there were hangars that have been sold and there was no assignment of the lease done appropriately. So of the 25 hangar leases, 13 of them fit into one of those three categories. So there's going to be some legwork on our end trying to kind of sort that out. In regards to the resolution, I don't think it's time sensitive that it gets approved tonight. I think having some direction moving forward for us would be beneficial for setting a standard moving forward, but I believe that some of the concerns that have been brought up by in the beginning of the meeting tonight are substantiated. And they should be, the resolution I think should be on a committee level on the agenda for review and public comment before it comes to this board for approval.
Thank you, Derek.
Any questions for me?
Mr. Hellwig.
Is there any need for any action at this point? I was just going to say, we table it as the board, send it back to the committee?
We could do that, yep. Mr. Paulson.
I would make a motion to send this back to the committee and report back next month.
The Committee of Jurisdiction is the Public Works Committee. Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Paulson to table this till next month's meeting. Mr. Hellwig.
Second.
Second. I got a motion and a second to postpone this until next month's county board meeting and send it back to the Public Works Committee for public comment and further discussion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kinsley. All right, moving on to number 13, Land, Water, Forest Resource Committee Chair Report. Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land, Water, Forest Resources Committee reviewed the 5-year Conservation Resource Management Plan that'll be in effect for the next 5 years. We approved it. The Conservation Department within that plan is going to spend a little bit more time helping focus our landowners to manage their forests. The next item of business is approval of the emergency fire wardens, and we have an outstanding question to the DNR why there aren't more fire wardens in the southern part of the county. So we'll get that answered, but I think now I would like to have approval of the fire wardens.
Okay. Mr. Buckholz,
I make a motion to approve.
Mr. Duffy. Okay. Yep, just a second, I got a motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Duffy. Any further discussion? Mr. Kinsley.
Mr. Paulson, I know a while back you used to use private people at the private homes to read fire wardens, and a few years later they've gone away from that. They didn't want it to be done at homes, they wanted it to be done just at businesses, so that might be the reason that there's.
Yeah, okay, we'll have the DNR answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kinsley. Okay, a motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Duffy to approve the 2021 approval of fire wardens. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
The next item of business are the over the county land sales. By mistake, my mistake, the committee did not act on these, but we decided to bring them forward anyway. They're routine, and the treasurer would like to get approval so she could proceed with closing the land sales.
Mr. Buckholz.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the over-the-counter land sales.
Okay, motion by Mr. Buckholz. Mr. Betcher.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Betcher to approve the over-the-county land sales. Can we do all three in one, Mr. Haas?
They're all listed as one agenda item.
Oh, okay. All right, is there any further discussion then?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Olson.
Yeah, just making sure for the over-the-counter land sales that they all meet the minimum bid requirements?
They did.
Okay, thank you.
They did. Yep. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Okay, moving on to number 14, Health and Human Services Board Chair Report. Mr. Schlueter.
Nothing to report.
Okay, well, we do have a COVID-19 update.
Okay, Mike, can you allow me to share my screen? Thank you. And from the beginning. Okay, good evening, everybody. I have a Sawyer County COVID update for this evening. On February 18th, 2021, we now have 1,479 cases. That equals 1,412 that have recovered. We have 44 that are active, and we have had 21 deaths related to COVID and 71 hospitalizations. And we are at 7,953 who have tested negative. As of today, we are back up into the red risk level. However, we are at 25 is the cutoff, 25 and plus per 100,000 cases. And we just jumped up to 25. Over the last 2 weeks, we were down into the orange at around the 23 per 100,000 cases per day. So that was a little over 3 cases that we were actually receiving per day of positive cases. So now we're just over 4. We're not overly concerned about this jump because we were monitoring some people who were close contacts and anticipating that they would end up being positive, which is different from just random community onset of positive cases that are not related. So we're hoping that we will drop back down into the orange level very soon. Our vaccine plans We still have vaccine that's out, or vaccine demand that's outreaching our resource availability as far as receiving the vaccine. However, that is starting to change for us. Just this last week, Sawyer County has received an increase in doses that we have gotten allotted from the state, as well as the hospital has joined with the county in our community vaccination efforts. That has also increased our vaccine supply to give out to the public. But it does take a lot of people to make this happen, and I've kind of termed this as it takes a village to make these clinics happen. We had 23 volunteers today at our community clinic. I also want to thank Wesleyan Church. They have offered their site for us over the last few weeks. We will soon be moving to First Lutheran over on between Nyman and Maine. And we're doing this because it is more convenient for us to be able to keep that site consistent. Ruby's uses Wesleyan Church on Thursdays, and it doesn't allow us to go as far into the afternoon as we'll need to as we move forward. We also have chosen to use Thursdays as our day to actually vaccinate the public because we do not receive our vaccine until Tuesday. It gives us a little time to be able to make sure we have all our efforts in place. And then we're doing a one-day clinic because it does take quite a bit of time to get all the resources in place and be able to set everything up. As you can see, we have volunteers at our registration, and that was just taken today. Vaccine distribution this week, Sawyer County Community Clinic is what we're calling those sites that the hospital and the county are working together. The hospital received 107 doses to give today. The county had 120 first doses and 138 second doses for this week. And next week, you'll see that we're definitely having a jump up between the hospital and the county. We're actually receiving even more doses. We'll have 394 first doses and 134 second doses. LCO is also increasing the number of vaccinations they're able to give because their allotments have also increased. This week, they have had a community clinic where they had 231 first doses and 130 second doses. So that's 361 doses, and they plan to do the same next week. In addition, both North Lakes, Essentia have been receiving vaccine, and Walgreens just this last week was able to receive doses as well. The Walgreens receiving doses, they're receiving about 100 doses per week. It could increase. I'm not able to kind of see exactly what they're giving, but federally, the plan is to enlist the pharmacies to help with this effort. This is something that the federal government learned with H1N1, that they needed to involve the pharmacies sooner if they ever had a situation where they needed to vaccinate a lot of people. And so Walgreens and other pharmacies are receiving doses directly from the federal government. It is not coming from our state allocations. So that is another very good positive for our communities. Just to give you a look at where we are at as of, this would be as of last night, as doses were put into the system. You can see the percent of Sawyer County residents who have received at least one dose. And it's at 13.8%. And I just wanted to give you a compare with Wisconsin residents in total is 13.1%. So we're really in line with the state. And that's important because I do want our vaccine to keep coming weekly. That allows us to really make sure that those second doses are given to people. Although the doses are always allotted to us, sometimes people can't come exactly when that vaccine gets here. And then we're able to turn those over to first doses and then the following week give a second dose. So I want to continue to make sure that vaccine continues to come into our county. And when we're aligned closely with where the state's at, that really allows us to know that we'll continue to receive allotments of vaccine. And then this is just another look at where we're moving. So you can definitely see the increases of vaccine coming into the community. The top graph is of Sawyer County residents week by week. And the bottom graph is of the vaccine coming into the state and being given out throughout the state. So really our graphs are really in alignment. You can see that the week of 2/7, we were a little bit higher in that number than the state was, and that probably is that difference in us being at 13.8 versus the state being at 13.1. Whoops. And so the last slide was just that we're really moving in the right direction. It is a lot of fun to be at these vaccine clinics. People are very happy to be getting their doses. I can tell you that we have at least 1,000 people on our wait list. That is an electronic wait list that's on our website, and they can also call in. However, a lot of times we're making calls and people have gotten vaccine. So that wait list is going down faster than we anticipate because people are on multiple wait lists. So we're really feeling like we're moving in the right direction. Any questions?
Okay, anything? Oh, yes, Mr. Olson?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't put my hand down.
Okay.
But thank you, Ms. Lyons, for everything you do for us.
You're welcome. And really, it's our community members that are stepping up and helping us. So really want to shout out to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, yep, thank you, Julie, appreciate it. All right, then, moving on to number 15, Finance Committee Chair Report. Mr. Paulson.
The first item on the agenda is a resolution to carry over unused 2020 funds to the Sheriff Department's 2021 budget. We've seen, at this time of year, we see a lot of these resolutions. It's pretty simple and straightforward.
Okay, Mr. Duffy? Okay, motion by Mr. Duffy. Mr. Slender, second. Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Slender to approve the resolution authorizing an increase to the 2020 Sheriff Department budget and carryover of unused funds. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to turn agenda items 15B, C, and D over to Mr. Hoff.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Hoff, you're on.
Thank you. Okay, the rest of the finance agenda has to do with the topic of the courtroom and Second Circuit Court situation that we've been dealing with for a few years now. So there's been some turnover in the board, so what I would like to do is just run through exactly all of the things that we've looked at and all of the actions that the board has previously taken to get us to the point that we're at tonight. I think it'll be a good review just to understand where we're at so that you understand the significance of what you're voting on this evening with the funding for this project. Way back in the mid part of 2015-16, there was some work done for security assessment in our current courtroom. This was one of the first steps that happened, and the judge and the judge's staff has been looking at this issue long before some of the security concerns that we have now, which are certainly more significant than when we started out. But that's one of the things that kind of kicked this ball off and running, along with the work that the state does and the district does as far as keeping track of the caseloads that run through circuit courts. Sawyer County has one circuit court. There are other counties that have one or more circuit courts, and they keep track of the number of cases running through these courts to keep track to make sure that everything gets run through the court system as it should. Sawyer County, over the years, going back to 2014, has had a significant caseload for a one-judge county. Even back in 2014, the judge need on a 3-year average was 1.56 judges. Over 1.5 judges is the caseload back in 2014. Some of that is offset by court commissioners, which can be used for that purpose, but that's at the cost of the county. A circuit court judge is paid for by the state. court commissioners are paid for by the county. So as we kind of roll through the years and see that caseload is actually increasing and increasing the need for a Second Circuit Court, back in 2017, the county board passed a resolution affirming the need for a Second Circuit Court for Sawyer County. So this was kind of the first step that the board actually took action, looking forward to obtaining a Second Circuit Court. Back around this time as well, there was some chatter about the state allocating additional circuit courts throughout the state. And Sawyer County, with the judge need that it has, ranks right up near the top. And I think even this year we are the #1 county needing an additional circuit court. After the county board in 2017 passed that referendum, we received a letter from Chief Judge Needham, who was the prior Chief Judge for District 10, acknowledging, that we did pass that resolution and pointing out, of course, that we do need 3 things for getting a Second Circuit Court. One is a resolution to that effect. Another is facilities. And what's the third one? Facilities, judicial workload, I guess. So, these things kind of came together, and the county board acknowledged that is a need and one that they would support, not only with the resources, but with the facilities needed to operate that Second Circuit Court. Also, get that block out of the way. Also in 2018, there was some efforts made at the state level to provide additional district attorney staff. And at that time, there was, they've also got a weighted caseload kind of report for district attorneys. And at that point, it was determined that Sawyer County has a workload of about 4.34 caseload for each district attorney. And at that time, we had 2. We had the district attorney and 1 assistant district attorney. Since that time, there's been allocation made for assistant district attorneys throughout the state, and Sawyer County received 1 additional district attorney in that process. Again, another 2-year study, weighted caseload back in 2018, and you can see that the Sawyer County, the judicial need on a 3-year average went up to 1.78. Which gets slightly mitigated again by court commissioners, but still a significant need here in Sawyer County. So questions, came up, well, what else can we do besides get a Second Circuit Court and a second judge? Are we running as efficiently as we can? So the county clerk at the time, Marge Kelsey, and Don Harper, the district attorney or district administrator for the 10th district at that time, put together a technical assistance report, which kind of analyzed the workflow and the scheduling and other activities within the Sawyer County court system, and made recommendations about scheduling and things that could improve the way that we operate a court. So this was an effort made so that we could make sure that we were actually needing that second Circuit Court and second judge. In 2019, we're getting a little bit more serious in discussions here. We put out a FAQ, a frequently asked questions about what it means to get a Second Circuit Court branch. Judge Yakla and I put this information together. I should note too that each one of these slides has a hyperlink behind it, so these are just kind of highlights of things that we're talking about. But if you want to dig back deeper into the actual documents on what was presented to the board at that time, you click on the title on each one of these slides and you'll get back to the actual documentation. And we can dig into that if you've got questions as we go along, but I'll just highlight these as we move forward. So knowing that we needed facilities for that Second Circuit Court and second judge, we hired Venture Architects to do a study for us, proposing additional space facilities for that Second Circuit Court. At that time, back in just about 2 years ago, actually, we considered our options for adding that space. You need a space about this size for that courtroom. So where do we put that? And we looked at various options. We looked at, within the confines of this parcel, where can we put a room this size? And we looked at, off the parking lot on this side, off the parking lot on that side, rearranging some departments around within the facility. Maybe we move this department somewhere else and bust out some walls. So we looked at a lot of different options, trying to find out what would be the best alternative to create this space for the facility. So as we moved along, Venture Architects put some information together based on the parameters that we gave them, based on discussions with staff. They came in and had meetings with the judge, the DA, clerk of courts, sheriff's department, just to find out about space needs, workflow, who hands off information to who, traffic of the inmates. All these kinds of things went into consideration on developing these various plans as we went along. We also put together some information on the operating budget. Obviously, a judge gets paid for it by the state, but there are costs incurred by the county to support those activities of the circuit court. So back in 2019, we put together the kitchen sink on if they needed, additional judicial assistant, additional court security, additional clerk of court staff, additional support staff for the district attorney. And there was a potential, that it could add another $400,000 of operating costs to operate a Second Circuit Court. And this was a preliminary projection. As we go through this and kind of refine our projections, there's another slide where we kind of reconcile to where we're kind of ending up here. But just to point out, all the thought that went into getting that Second Circuit Court as we move through the process here. Again, Venture came back in August of 2019 with some different ideas based on the discussions that we had at the time. And then in 2019, this is, the big act that was passed by the governor in 2019, or actually in 2020. Back in March, it seems so long ago. It was the beginning of the pandemic when this law was enacted. That's why it seems so long ago. But actually, this is the act then that provided 12 new circuit courts throughout the state over the next 3 years. And the first set of 4 were named in the law. The second set of 4, I think, are either named or will be named. The final 3 or final 4 counties in the third year are going to be named in November of this year. And it is anticipated, that Sawyer County would be one of those counties getting the Second Circuit Court in that named third wave. The only thing holding it back at this point is the availability of the facilities. And so they need to see that we are preparing to get those facilities up and running by the time a judge would be seated, which would be in August of 2023. And so we would need the infrastructure facilities available in May at the time of the elections or shortly thereafter of 2023. So we continued to look at different options for those facilities. I put this slide out there because we did, spend a little money, obviously, with the architects, working out some of the plans and engineering that needed to be involved in trying to see what fit onto this building. And this building is actually 3 different sections that were built at various times, so it's a little bit complicated trying to tie all that together. Excuse me. But each step along the way, we did come to you, for appropriation to spend, those dollars that we were spending on this project. And you had an opportunity along the way to, approve those funding contingencies. This came out of contingency, but it's a budget adjustment that was done so that we could spend the money. And we always get that authority before we spend that money on anything. And that kind of brings us to where we're at today with the funding of the facilities. More reports. Back in June then of last year, 2020, we had refined our budget of the operations expense. And it's a significant change because of some things that happened in the meantime. Specifically, the clerk of courts, we did add 0.6 full-time equivalent in their budget in 2020. And we added a 0.6 FTE or full-time equivalent to the district attorney staff. And that allowed them to have full-time positions that were previously by part-time employees. So they are staffed with full-time people in both of those positions now. We also eliminated a judicial assistant from the estimate. We've got one judicial assistant now, and the judge, after discussions, thinks that we can get through with one judicial assistant. We'll talk a little bit more about the courtroom layout, but the layout that we're considering now, I think, eliminates the need for additional courtroom security. And we can address that question in a bit here, but the staffing levels, I think, are sufficient to support a Second Circuit court. It may not be everything they wanted, but I don't think there's a department in the county that has all of the personnel that they would require to do their job to fullest capacity. So I think this is a good compromise that we worked out to staff a Second Circuit court adequately to provide those services. If there's a time in the future where, you know, they would say, you know what, we really need another personnel, that would come through the budget process, and that would be in competition with all of the other needs and services provided by the county. And you would have an opportunity then to weigh those needs and services together as we prepare budgets in the future years. Excuse me. Something we didn't anticipate in 2020, but hit us all pretty hard. COVID-19 obviously changed some of the court's plans. Kind of a sidelight on what we're talking about today, but it does bring to our attention, you know, some of the space needs that occurred during the operations of a court with jury trials and the space needed to keep people further apart. We did use the assembly room and the other conference room at times to make sure that, you know, we had sufficient space for juries as they came in, that sort of thing. So, you know, it does affect us. We've got really limited space for, you know, the assembly room, and one other conference room is basically the other meeting rooms besides this, and we use this room for the boardrooms like we're using now. So anytime something like this happens that's a little bit out of the ordinary, it kind of hits us pretty hard. Also, in 2020, we kind of had an opportunity where a lot of nice things came together, and this is one of them. We had discussions with the city of Hayward as they were laying a new sewer line down California Avenue behind the Senior Resource Center. And we were talking with the city, and they were talking about possibly extending that street, and that would take them across county land. So we got into a discussion about it would be nice if you would vacate 5th Street and extend California Avenue to allow that traffic to go through, but then we could build across 5th Street. The significance of that is 5th Street is between this courthouse and the jail. And we'll see the significance of that when we talk about court security and the flow of traffic, inmate traffic and staff traffic to and from the jail to get to court. It has always been an issue. And that's really one reason that we didn't consider this to begin with. There had been talk over the years of fixing that problem. You know, and the city had never been amenable to closing 5th Street, but because of the opportunity of extending California Avenue, it really opened up the opportunity for us to proceed with that option. And that was really a game changer, I think, in the ability for us to cure a lot of problems. Some of those slides you saw before about Venture Architects and the plans they put together, one of the plans that a lot of people liked was the plan where the new courtroom would be across the street, and actually 2 courtrooms across the street attached to the jail. That was significantly more expensive than trying to add something on this side, which is why we were concentrating a lot of our efforts in the beginning to adding a courtroom to this facility. But there was so many advantages to having the courtroom attached to the jail, albeit it was too expensive of an option at that time. With the vacation of 5th Street, it really brings that cost down for a facility that is attached to the jail, and actually attaches this courtroom and the new courtroom to the jail in one unit. And that was really significant in our planning and in the planning for security for future personnel needs as well for security staff from the Sheriff's Department. So we did reach agreement with the city that allows them to build California Avenue and vacate 5th Street to allow for our construction of a building across the former 5th Street. In that agreement, the county will bear the cost of that, and they are looking to let those bids out in early March. So like within a couple of weeks, they are ready to proceed building that street. That street does need to be vacated before we can start construction, so it is important that they get that portion of the project done. There is a water main that runs under 5th Street that would need to be vacated, and then a new water main constructed under California Avenue. And the city would take care of those bids and that construction, and the county would agree to pay that bill. So that is part of the project, and as that project starts, that's kind of the need of the funding at this point, is once we start spending some money, we do need that authority to pay for the contracts that are entered into. So the other thing that you adopted in November of 2020 was not only the operating budget, but the capital improvement plan. And within the capital improvement plan, we had allocated about $7 million for that second courtroom, figuring we maybe spend about $2 million of it yet this year, and then the major construction next year. So we'll talk a little bit more about the timing of that, but you did approve in the 2021 budget the cost up to $2 million in this year for the second courtroom. More plans from Venture that kind of address the plan now with 5th Street vacated. And all of this kind of wraps around Supreme Court Rule Chapter 68, which identifies what a courtroom needs to look like, the minimum requirements or standards for construction of a courtroom. So we've been working with the district staff, Judge Yackel, and the other departments as far as the needs and the requirements for that. So we've been working very closely with Chris Channing of the 10th District to make sure that we are going to build a facility that meets the requirements of the staff or of the rules. So those are kind of some of the highlights that we've gone through since 2016, 2017. What we're looking for tonight, there's a resolution, which is the next item on the agenda, that authorizes the county to issue bonds, which is debt that would pay for the construction of the second courtroom. The reason that we're doing that now, as I mentioned before, is we need that authorization in order to enter into these contracts to spend this money. The resolution that you'll be considering is called an initial resolution. By state statute, a county or any government entity is required to issue an initial resolution, which says the purpose for the debt and an amount not to exceed. So, the amount that is before you is $8 million on the resolution, and that's based upon some estimates, again, by Venture, working with engineering firm to get as close estimates as we can at this stage. We don't have exact numbers at this point because we do need to spend money to get a little more engineering done before we have the real number etched in stone, but the numbers that we have before you have been developed over time and over several revisions. So that's a lot of information about where we are and how we got here. If you've got questions, and I know you do, and it's good to ask them at this point, and we've got several people that are either in the room tonight or online here virtually that can help answer those questions, including the Chief Judge, Maureen Boyle, John Anderson, who is the Deputy Chief Judge for the 10th District, and Chris Channing, who we've been working with as the District Court Administrator. And John Yackel, of course, is in the back of the room, as well as Sheriff Department staff. I believe we've also got John Kane from Venture Architects on the line. Brian Della, our financial advisor. We'll get to him probably on the next item as we talk more specifically about the financial aspects and what that debt means on the capital side. And our bond counsel, Von Briesen, Andy Phillips, represented by Rebecca Roker here this evening. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board, and you can have your discussion and ask questions or take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff. Do we want to go into the video prior to discussion, or do you want to, because I know Lieutenant Johnson's here and I've got him under letter C. How does the board want to proceed?
Yeah, as we talk about the court and the court layout, there's some significant security concerns that we've been trying to address throughout the process, and I believe Sheriff Morotek and Lieutenant Johnson have some information regarding that as well.
Yeah, I think we'll do letter C prior to our discussion. Yes, Mr. Schlender.
Couple of points, just to give a context. One, I want to thank Mr. Hoff for the presentation. That was pretty detailed, and it's causes stress just watching all the stuff that we've gone through these last probably 4 years as we worked on this monumental endeavor. The thing about this exercise is the first thing is that this is about safety. It's about protecting, theoretically, philosophically, it's protecting the Constitution of the United States, making sure that citizens have equal access to the court system and due process under the law. But sometimes those people that come through that require adjudication are sometimes dangerous, and we ask our law enforcement officers to put themselves between us and them to ensure that their safety. And so this construction contemplates creating an avenue or a safe area for them to do their work with causing minimal interaction or minimal exposure to the public. And so a video that you're going to see is going to highlight a situation that happened in this courtroom in January, I believe, where there was a person who required law enforcement involvement to ensure the safety of the courtroom and ensure the safety of the participants in the courtroom, but also to ensure the safety of the people as we put this person back into incarceration. This person was accused of, and I don't know if it's been adjudicated, this person's been accused of murder and taking human life, and had taken 2 lives, and that would necessitated that person to come to court. And so in providing for that safety, during the time of removing him from, literally from where I'm sitting right now to the jail, took 6 deputies. And so this video is going to speak to that. Lieutenant Johnson, who is the person who's in charge of our jail operations, is probably in a better position to speak on that, but the sheriff is here. The judge who presided over that hearing is here. And so that's the context that I wanted to put as we go into this video.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Okay, Mr. Johnson.
What you'll see here is the carport. It's directly across the street where the sheriff, chief deputy, and I parking spot shortly. You'll see us carrying the individual across the street here. This is the first snippet of a video. There's 3 short videos all involving the exact same incident. There you can see us coming across that street. We were very lucky in this situation. This was actually in August is when this happened. We were very lucky. One, because it was August, it was sunny out, warm. As you can see, minimal traffic, but still traffic coming by. Had this been in the winter time, had there been something else going on, it could have been a different outcome. It was icy this time of year. Here you'll see us continuing along to the outside of Sally Port where squad cars typically pull in. Let's bring Rusty to the jail. The third video, you won't have to play this one all the way through, Mr. Colson, but basically this just illustrates us getting him into not even technically the secure portion of the jail, but into an area that requires key card to exit. first incident like this that has happened, and with things set up the way they are, I pretty much can guarantee this won't be the last. Does anybody have any questions about the video? He has waist restraint on as well as shackles. He's got handcuffs that are connected to waist restraint. Our contractor certainly makes that piece for itself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Not when we got to this point. No, pretty much once we got him out of the courtroom, it was just that late at that point, but it still required us to hear across the public area where anybody could come up.
Okay, appreciate that, Mr. Johnson, Sheriff. All right, Mr. Hoff?
While we have you up there, if you just want to kind of go over the layout, and this is not as pretty as the other layouts that we had, but this kind of gives an illustration of the two courtrooms. This would be the existing courtroom and the new courtroom with the jail at this end as well. When we originally talked about remodeling and whatnot, and we're trying to find spaces for a jail or a courtroom on either side of this building or within the building, there was no contemplation to do any remodeling to this courtroom at all. But in discussions with the security aspect and future personnel issues, I think it does behoove us to take a look at the plan where this courtroom would actually face the other direction. The entrance would be back here, same as the other courtroom. Mr. Johnson, if you want to just kind of walk through that a little bit more.
Certainly. If you look at the very top left there, there's, I guess, four kind of rectangular shapes. That currently is the carport you saw the first video from. That would be basically turned into use for the sheriff's department. To the right of that, there's two orange squares and then a long red area that goes straight up. That long red area would be considered the secure portion of the jail. The two orange areas there would be holding cells where jail staff would be able to escort inmates down, get them into the restraints, place them in the holding cells. On the other side of that then, our thought would be that that would be key card access only, meaning basically to go through that door, you'd have to be an employee, law enforcement, et cetera. Not technically secure portion of the jail, but our court services and court security would remain armed on that side of it. They would then also hopefully have offices in that area. Currently there are 3 full-time employees for the court services division, the court services, court security, and Cuba deputies. The thought is, especially with Justice Point coming in, that the Cuba deputy job description could kind of change here, and all of them could have offices in that area, making them readily available for either courtroom. They would still do their respective jobs, however, that would put 3 armed deputies that close to either courtroom. Yes.
So those two holding cells, those would be new.
Those would be new. That's where the current entrance to the SWAT garage is, the garage door there.
No, I'm going to allow some discussion. Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other questions for Mr. Johnson here? Oh. No, it's only for the board, Mike. Okay. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Johnson in the drawing that was on the screen? If not, Mr. Paulson, I would like to go into the finance part of this and maybe hear from you and maybe our financial consultant, Brian, some of you talked about, Tom. As far as how does this affect the taxpayers of Sawyer County? And have we done a 5-year plan that will strategically, incrementally make this happen?
Yes, so we did a 5-year plan last year, and I think Mr. Hoff, I think, has sent out to the board a copy of the 5-year plan. It's very hard to read, but in essence, it says if we fund $8 million in debt, our tax rate would go up about approximately 5%, given the current projections for our operating costs. There's the schedule right now. You can see and we project 5% for several years, with the percentage increase dropping off substantially once we pay off the old jail debt. And
Yes.
if you go way over a little bit further to the left, I mean, we're on the debt portion of it now, a little bit further. That way, there we are. That's the operating part of the budget. So we've combined in our financial plan both the operations and the debt service and capital expenditure part of operating the county.
Okay. Mr. Schluter?
Bruce, when is the jail debt going to be retired?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
When is the jail debt going to be retired?
I think 2025, I think if we look, okay, 2025, right there. You can see the first blue column would be the old jail debt, which we did refinance maybe 5 years ago at a very, very attractive interest rate.
Okay. And then if Mr. Kane is still on the phone, Mr. Kane, you had talked to us last week about possibly getting this all done for not to exceed 8 million. Are you still fairly confident that we can do all that?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead,
Yes.
Mr. Kane.
Right. That's trusting that we, begin work this year. The numbers are based on 2021 budget estimates.
Okay, and does that include an assembly room or a meeting room for us? I know
Yes,
you
it
had.
does. Yes, it does. Correct. And it's illustrated in the diagram that was shown on the plan a few moments ago, the sketch. So that would, there's some other little details. I think we've been able to make some adjustments in the wing of the clerk of court with where CJC is located. And I think we're going to be able to retain your current assembly room. So this would give you both that assembly room to continue for committee meetings, et cetera, as well as a new larger assembly, what I call / county boardroom. So then you can take the function of the county board out of the first court branch. And that's it's also in the $8 million.
Okay, and you've spoken with Justice Point people, and they've got enough room also for counseling rooms and what they need?
That's what I understand, I think. Tom, you've talked with them, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, we did meet with them, and the tricky part with that is we're talking about room for diversion programs that are not developed yet. So, with their experience, and thankfully they're on board to provide that experience, that they can tell us, what those things look like and what kind of space is needed.
Mr. Hellwig.
Mr. Kane, does the cost entail the electronics from this room over to the other boardroom, if you want to call it that?
We have, we've set aside what I call video court equipment, and we're still confirming what that number is. It's one of about 10 or 20 other soft cost items that are included in the $8 million. You have a vendor that you work with in that regard, and we want to be working with them to help confirm that, but certainly would hope that we can reuse a lot of the video court audiovisual equipment, screens, et cetera, that are in the current courtroom.
One more. Mr. Kane, I believe it was during the Public Works Committee, I had brought up a possibility of putting in a opioid clinic, and you said you'd look into that. What came out of that?
I apologize. We've really not done anything with that at this point. I apologize in that regard.
Okay. And Mr. Kane, does the 8 million include what we need to pay to complete California Avenue and reroute that
That is
water line
correct.
under Fifth Street?
Yes, Tom has provided to me a number of $410,000, and that's included in the roughly $8 million.
Mr. Buchholz.
Mr. Chair, can we go back to the sketch
Yep.
of the buildings, please?
Is that what you wanted to say?
Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Mr. Kane, could you briefly describe the separation that this plan entails as well?
Certainly. Am I able to take control of the screen in any way? I don't have to necessarily, but.
No, I'll try and follow along with you here, though.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Kane.
Okay. I've got a whole bunch of stuff on my screen. I apologize. Oh, can you see my arrow?
No.
Okay, well, that's fine. So Tom was referring to is what we call the three-way separation. You have the public with this beige color coming from the lobby through a hallway, and this is a screening point right here. Yes, so they're coming up. This is all public space here. And so then the first set of arrows, the public comes into the repositioned courtroom to the south, that's that arrow, into the gallery, or across the hallway into the new courtroom there. And so it's simply a mirrored version of the first courtroom, the same size. So that's where the public comes in. The staff, and let's start with the existing courtroom over in the lower left. You have the jury deliberation group of spaces, toilets, and they come in and out of the jury box over here. You have the judge and their staff over to the left, the blue, the judge, court reporter, court clerk, the green corridor. This is all a secure area. They come in to the courtroom that way. That's the second path. And then the third path, as I believe was noted by the sheriff's staff, they're coming from the jail up at the very top. There's some holding rooms there. They come down, and I'm going to go down to the first courtroom. They come all the way down to the original courtroom. Well, I think you get the idea. And so there's some holding rooms there as well. So in practice, the only place where these three entities, the public, the offender, and the staff come together will be in the courtroom itself. And so that whole pattern, as I just described in this original courtroom, will be repeated in the new construction. And the colors you can follow, the jury deliberation room off to the right, the judge and their staff are over to the right as well with windows out. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Okay, is there any other discussion before I entertain the motion? We haven't heard from Mr. Olson or Ms. Pettit yet, or do you have anything to add?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Olson.
I'd received some calls and from constituents. I've been supportive of this program and this project since its inception. I think having sat in court and listening to what goes on there, our judge is overwhelmed. I don't blame him whatsoever. I think we have the best judge in the Northern District. Apologies to Judge Boyle, who's online, but I think we have just a fabulous judge, and he needs help, and he needs a second judge. So I think we can all be agreed that we need the project, and we're going to build it. Now let's find something that we can all agree on building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Mr. Kane, I had one other question. Does this 8 million include the Veteran Service Office, or are we gonna leave that building independent by itself?
It does not include the veteran services. Does
Okay.
not.
Okay. Mr. Buckholz,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve this resolution providing the sale and not to exceed $8 million. Need any more in that motion?
that sounds good. I have a motion by Mr. Buckholz. I have a second by Mr. Schleter to approve the resolution in the sale of general obligation bonds or notes not to exceed $8 million. Is there any further discussion? This will take a 2/3 vote, correct, Mr. Hoff?
Three-quarter vote
3/4 vote.
of the
3/4
elected
vote.
body, which is 12 board members.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Helwig?
I just want to reiterate what I believe is a very important item is some sort of a opioid clinic. And I believe that this is probably our only chance to do something in the county. We're not going to have any funds in the future to get anything and to possibly work it in. It's a pretty big issue for me. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Helwig. Okay, if there's no further discussion, Ms. Fitch, we'll need a roll call. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Schlender.
Real quickly, Mr. Chairman, a couple of points. One is, this is an issue of debt, not a transfer or a moving of funds from one project to another. All of the projects that are currently undertaken or issues that are pending before this board in this county will remain funded with probably the same vigor as they were before today. Second is, as a member of the, as a junior member of the judiciary for this courtroom, this is a vital and an important step that we're taking. And we mentioned this before in different committees. We've talked about this ad nauseum. And one of the things that I had asked before was if there was ever a way to go back to 58 and 59 when our predecessors were discussing what was going to go in place for the bond issuance for the building of this courtroom. And I think this is an investment that we may not exactly see right now, but this is an investment that our grandchildren are going to benefit from this, because we're doing this conscious of what pandemics, drug epidemics, safety, and so we may not immediately realize the benefit of this, but our children and grandchildren will probably thank us for this, or at least acknowledge us.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. I guess we have not heard from Mr. Channing or Ms. Boyle or Judge Anderson. Are we good? Is there any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Fitch, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Betcher,
Yes.
Mr. Schleter,
Yes.
Mr. Schlender,
Yes.
Ms. Hessel,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Paulson,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Helwig, Mr. Van Etten,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Pettit,
No.
Mr. Kinsley, Mr. Buckholz,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Did we get everyone? Oh, Mr. Bissonette.
Mr. Bizinet,
Yes.
we have 13 yes, 2 nay.
Motion carries. Nice job, Mr. Hoff. Okay. Moving on then, number 16, County Administrator's Report, Mr. Hoff.
I get to talk again. I had one somewhere. All right. Just a couple other items, since you heard me talk enough already today. Significant issues happening both on the federal level and the state level with regards to funding for counties. On the federal level, fiscal year 2021 Reconciliation Act is out there being discussed. The current allocation is about 65 billion that would be allocated directly to counties based on population. Under that proposal, Sawyer County would receive 3.2 million. Staggering amount of dollars that would help the county. Obviously, we're not going to count those dollars until we see them, but interesting that that provision is out there, and we'll see what kind of strings are attached to that if it does make it through, and what kind of dollar amount. But significant proposal in the works there. On the state side, the governor presented his budget initiatives on Tuesday evening. A couple of things on the county that are also would be very helpful, especially on the operating side, is the potential to add a 0.5% sales tax in addition to the 0.5% sales tax that we already have. If that makes it through, the way it's written right now, it would require a referendum to do that, but that would also provide significant help to our operating budget, funded a lot by people that visit our county as well. So that would be a nice proposal if that made it through. There's some other things that I mentioned there too, and we'll just kind of wait to see what makes it through the budget before we get too carried away on it. But some other good things for counties in there as well. There's also been discussion about the census. The census is delayed due to the COVID pandemic. So we're waiting to see what kind of solutions they come up with the state statutes that say things happen by a certain date, and I don't think they will, because we won't get the data in time. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. On the legislative front, for us, of course, the Wisconsin Counties Association Legislative Exchange is occurring virtually this year, March 3rd and 4th. That's another opportunity. Normally, we're down in Madison listening to that and meeting with legislators and the governor at that time. That'll be done virtually, but that's certainly an opportunity for us to voice our concerns, which we do not only in that legislative exchange, but also in our county ambassador program. Last year, because of the work done by WCA and other organizations, the county benefited in our basic allocation for child welfare from $384,000 to $534,000. So an additional $150,000 was allocated to Sawyer County for child welfare, which is certainly significant for those programs as well. But that came about solely because of the efforts, the lobbying efforts that counties made and WCA made on behalf of that program. So we continue to work on the other issues that affect the county as well, and that's a good way to get things done. So other issues are on the back page there too, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you've heard of things that you need some answers for. So.
Okay, anything else from Mr. Hoff? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Hoff. Let's
Mr.
move
Chair.
on then. Oh, Mr. Buckles.
Let's take a 5 potty break.
Break? Okay.
Yes.
We'll take a 5-minute, see if we can get that done. 5-minute break, please. Okay, we're back in session. Do I have everyone? Oh, there he is. Thank you, Mr. Paulson. We are back, no, he's okay. We are back in session, number 17, proposed board policy revisions, discussion and possible action. 17A is an amendment to Rule 2-9 that came out of the Administration Committee regarding policy and procedure for meeting quorum and virtual attendance. And Mr. Schlender had a great idea. Can you explain that, sir, before we?
So essentially, what we have is we've got rules that are based on pre-COVID activities, and what we're trying to do is alleviate we have a temporary suspension of Rule 10 of this chapter. Rule 10 limits 3 virtual participations during a calendar year. That is suspended, I think, and through May or June of this year, and it may be extended out. I think that's contemplated here. But then we have rule number 8 and rule number 9. Rule number 8 has to deal with having the board chair or a committee chair calling a meeting into session. And then rule 9 has to deal with creating the definition of presence or being able to participate or quorum to include in-person and virtual. The one caveat that we have, and this kind of spreads over the 3 rules. The caveat is, one is, we want to make sure that those of us who take this oath to serve on this board, and this sounds odd because we don't have any people like that on this board right now, is that they take the oath seriously and they show up for meetings, and that they don't miss meetings, and if they are missing meetings, they're taking the appropriate steps to show respect for the fact that, quorum and things are in place. The second one is, if you cannot be present or if you elect to participate virtually, that if there's ever a time when we have to go to executive session, there's a concern with electronic transmission about the security that is expected for a board or a committee to conduct their business. And so what was discussed at admin was, if you are virtual, then we go into an exec session motion, then you need to turn your camera on and then certify that you are the only person present in the area that you're at, and that you're ensuring that the conversation that's coming is not being broadcast or would not escape your area of wherever you're at. And you're ensuring that the confidentiality of the matter is done. And then if you are virtual and your face is engaged in the camera, then you have a chance to vote. If you are virtual but you're on the phone, you can vote for the purposes of the vote, but you don't count for the quorum. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schlender. So at this time, then, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution amending the board rules, meeting quorum, and attendance.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second. Okay. I'll take motion by Ms. Pettit, second by Mr. Duffy, to approve the resolution amending the board rules for meeting quorum and attendance. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions, please.
Oh, yes, Mr. Peters, I'm sorry.
And one of those is, does the year mean the calendar year, or does it mean within a 1-year period?
I think the calendar year, as defined under the policies, is the calendar year. Because we serve a 2-year term, there's essentially 2 years that you have a responsibility, and that those policies are reviewed at any time. So I guess it would be a 12-month period, and I don't know how that would really be interpreted. It's just a year is understood as a year term.
So starting with the time of being elected and approved on the, okay.
Yep.
And the second thing, does if the meeting is called virtual by a chair, does that count towards those 3?
So if the chair is going to participate virtually, then there's the requirements of how the chair would participate. That three meeting is currently suspended by a previous action,
I
so that's not
understand.
applicable for that analysis.
Mr. Batcher? Oh,
Go ahead. I guess I understand that, but I thought that that if the chair was going to be, if the meeting was going to be completely virtual, basically, then my question was whether or not, if this is going to continue into the future, will that count towards being one of the three that a committee member would be responsible for?
So that's a prospective analysis, and right now, there's no way to answer that because what we're doing is temporary provisions adapting to a COVID kind of situation. And depending on who you're talking to, COVID's either gone, going to be gone later on, or it's going to be here for a long time, or it's going to come in a different form. So the only real question that we have right now is we're trying to make sure that we maintain our statutory requirement under Wisconsin state law, and we still are able to conduct business that is recorded and consistent with open meetings laws, open records laws, and it comports with what our rules are. So,
okay,
I mean, we can speculate, but that would not, it's not helpful for the analysis of what we're trying to accomplish. And I don't mean
Okay,
to
I understand that now, but I did not understand it reading the resolution.
And Mr. Peters, there was discussion at admin that when we do, in July, when we do look at that rule again that's suspended, that we would look at the number of virtual meetings and readdress it at that time.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Betcher?
I guess my only question is why are we, suspending until July when, if one thing this COVID, pandemic has shown us that we can hold virtual meetings, efficiently and effectively. They have been working very well, in my opinion, better than I expect them to. So I'm just wondering why we can't, instead of setting an arbitrary date, which I understand we're going to be, relook at it in July, why not just say, the rest of the year, or why do we even have to put a date on it? Why does there have to be a number of three since they are working so well?
Right, but we had suspended this a year ago in July for a year. So it'll come up again following that. Okay, is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we move to 17B and C. These two resolutions have not gone to committee yet, but they are sponsored by several county board supervisors. So according to our bylaws, we can discuss and take action on these after we get a 2/3 vote to discuss them. Otherwise, they would be referred back to the committee and be brought to us like 17A was. So at this time, then, I would entertain a motion to discuss, which will take 10 votes, correct, Mr. Hoff? Okay.
Then I'll make that motion to discuss.
Motion by Mr. Helwig.
Second.
Second by Mr. Paulson. Okay. Lynn, this will take a roll call vote then to discuss these, and we'll start one at a time with 17B.
Mr. Schlender,
Yes.
Mr. Helwig,
Yes.
Mr. Schleter,
Yeah.
Mr. Duffy, Mr. Schuman,
Yeah.
Ms. Hessel, Mr. Bissonette,
Yes.
Mr. Paulson, Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Betcher,
Yes.
Ms. Pettit,
Yes.
Mr. Van Etten,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsley, Mr. Buckholz,
Yes.
Mr. Peters.
Yes.
We have
Okay,
15
motion
yes.
carries. All right, then we will start with 17B. Open for discussion and possible action, amendment to Rule 1-3 regarding filling of board supervisor vacancies of the Sawyer County Board of Supervisors Policy and Procedure Manual. Discussion and possible action. Okay, do you care to, Mr. Betcher?
Yes, so this, we've had some say it's been a fluke, but it's been kind of unprecedented, maybe, but that doesn't mean we won't see this sort of thing again in the future. So in the last 16 months, we've had 4 vacancies. 3 of those have occurred in the last 4 months. So that equates to about, well, exactly 20% of our board vacancies have to be appointed in the last 4 months. And these are positions that not only are they appointed, but because it happened so early in the election cycle, like the gentleman from District 15, he's going to be in that position, an elected position for 18 or 19 months as an appointed supervisor. And the residents of his district did not have an opportunity to vote for him or against him. And again, none of this is in any way personal against any of the appointed members or the chairman. It was simply brought to my attention that it seemed like there could be some potential bias there. And I assured those people it was not. The chairman is following the orders as written in the laws, following the letter of the law and his authority to appoint those people. The concern was that those appointed people are staying there for an extended period of time. So those 3 new appointees are going to be there for, well over a year, 14, 15, and about 19 months. So wanted to make 2 changes to the existing policy. One is that if they are appointed prior to, well, more than a year, so prior to April 1st of the year preceding the next election, that we then hold a special election. And then the other change is that the chairman appoints a new supervisor within a certain time frame. As it's written now in our current policy, there is no parameters for a time limit or anything like that. So a lot of times they're appointed quickly. District 9 supervisor was vacated and replaced within days, and same with District 15. District 4, however, remained, that position was in abeyance for nearly 2 months. And which is, again, it's within the chairman's rights and as it's written. But, theoretically, he didn't have to appoint anybody tonight. That position could have remained open for another 6 months. It could have stayed open until April of next year. There's nothing written that says that vacancy needs to be filled within a certain time frame. So the only changes that are being introduced are that if it happens, if the person's going to be appointed for more than a year, we hold a special election. And the other thing is that the position needs to be filled within a certain time frame. I recommended 30 days, but again, this is for discussion. So if that can be, further changed to 45 days or 60 days. And the 1 April caveat that I had in there, many other counties in the state have actually a 1 June time frame. So if the person is appointed prior to 1 June, then they hold a special election. So I put it at 1 April, meaning that, it would be more than a year. So that's where this came from. It came from questions that I received from residents about the legitimacy. I assured them it was, but then that brought up the question of it. I know this now allows for the perception that we might be doing something, not unethical, but it might be a little bit biased. So I just wanted to bring it up for discussion. Thank you.
And then, Mr. Betcher, that special election would be in that supervisor's district, right? We would have an election.
Yes, obviously, if we could coincide it with the, the primaries, which we just had 2 days ago, and then the normal spring election in early April, we're a little late to do that this year. But if we did that, then it would save, whatever monetary costs might be involved with that township or town hall holding a special election.
Okay. Mr. Schlender.
So I want to echo the points that Mr. Betcher has raised. I did get more than a few phone calls. This vote, today's vote, was something that is resonating right now. There are people talking about this vote. They're seeing this online, and they were looking at the composition and trying to, do whatever. And 2020 is going into 2021, and we're in really hyper partisan times, and people are nervous. They're I don't know. It's easy for them to find fault and they're looking for, I don't know, some kind of guidance or something. And I looked at this resolution. I thought it was really well worded. I spoke with Mr. Betcher. I've spoken to some other board members about this. And I think this is important to protect the integrity of our board, to protect the integrity of the board members coming on. The perception usually is what drives the day. And I know, serving with you and all of you, that we put a lot of work into this, and then we deal with criticism from constituents who didn't like the fact that we couldn't vote what they wanted specifically. And now you're taking someone who is not elected and now going to carry the burden of this. And so Ms. Hassel is going to walk out of here and catch up all of the 5 years of discussion that we had on this courtroom. And they're going to say, how did you vote on this? Why did you take this position? And she has got, 3 hours. And that's not fair to her. And that's the same it was when Mr. Voigt vacated his position and we waited for Ms. Pettit to come in, and when we waited for Ms. Taylor when she vacated, and then we got Mr. Bissonette. And so when we have that much turnover, I would think that our board chair would want this kind of protection, because when you're coming in and your first words were, I interviewed a lot of people. Well, you're not representing that district, but you're picking the representative for that district. And it's within the board rules, but you should allow us some way to help you protect yourself from what is the scrutiny that's going to happen, because you've then selected literally a quarter of this. And if you would have picked someone, if you could have had a conversation, you could have influenced, or your district could have influenced the other district, and we could have lost this vote that happened, or we could have voted on something else differently. And that puts a lot of influence in there. When we had the masking issue and the COVID things coming up there, we had constituents who were furious that we were having non-elected people telling citizens of this county what they ought to do, what they should do, what they can't do. And their argument was, if they're not elected, why are they speaking for us? And so we should take that same type of reference when it comes to the people who serve on this board. So those are my 2 cents.
Thank you. Mr. Heller.
You know what? I don't even know myself.
Okay.
My hand's raised.
Oh, Ms. Pettit, I'm sorry.
I understand where this is coming from, and it's a good intention, it's good-hearted, but my exact nature, I guess, within this is that in my position where I took over for Mr. Voigt, I then that was October, election was April, no one ran against me. I guess where I'm trying to get at this is that there are a lot of people that like to speak trash about anything we discuss or we vote on, or what we're doing wrong, never what we're doing right. They will sit there and complain about it, but not one of them will throw their hat in the ring. And I totally understand we represent everybody in our districts. I took so many phone calls about a zoning meeting this morning. Jim can even attest, I was going back over the zoning minutes this afternoon. I understand where this is going, but I also understand that I don't think our chairman or anybody on that board would try to do something underhanded or facetious or anything like that. I can understand the one part, but not the special election. If he appoints, and it is what it is. If they thought there was something, they should have thrown their hat in the ring and asked to be interviewed for it. That's all I got.
Okay. Yep, thank you, Ms. Pettit. Okay, so at this time then, I would entertain a motion to approve this resolution. Mr. Hellwig.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, as presented.
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Van Etten. So I got a motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Mr. Van Etten
I have a question.
to approve the resolution. Mr. Kinsley.
I'd like to commend you about putting all this together, Mr. Betcher. I think you did a wonderful job. The only downfall I have is telling the town that they have to have a special election. I don't know where to go with that. I'm thinking, can you just go to the town board and ask them, give them X amount of days to come forward with someone else? An example would be Mr. Buckles, you're out in Meadowbrook. Is your town really gonna wanna have a special election? If you can't hit these other election dates, that's where the downfall is. And if you can't hit the other election dates, they have to put that whole election. Just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Schlier.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, Ron. If that were to happen in my district, you'd have to have 2 townships involved. So how do you do polling in both townships? Who votes, who knows who's in which boundary, blah, blah, blah. And elections are not cheap. They are very costly endeavors. And trying to get this passed in the hopes that there's going to be one coming up soon, it's pretty shaky. I kind of also disagree that I think this is a quirk. 15, 16 years, this is something I've never seen before. So I don't think it's a regularly occurring event. I just don't feel good about rushing into this at this point in time.
Mr. Buckles.
I'm just kind of saying the same thing as Mr. Kinsley. That's one of the reasons, Mr. Betcher, that I did not want to help sponsor this, because I didn't care about the way it was coming back to the elections, and then it would fall back on the town boards. Otherwise, to me, it's okay otherwise, other than that.
Hang on, Ms. Pettit.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Hessel.
As somebody that just went through the process relatively, well, today, I just want to say that I think that it's important to protect the integrity of this governing board. So I'm also on the school board, and when we had somebody resign, we did the interview process. It was not just one person. So I think this is a great way to protect the chairman and to protect any future chairman. I mean, it's not just about what's happening at the moment. You have to think forward. And if you're able to think forward, then the cost of an election isn't that bad, because you need to get integrity first.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Chairman Schuman,
Yes,
I'm
Ms.
right
Pettit.
along with Mr. Kinsley, Mr. Buckholz. The other thing is, I go across 3 district boundaries, 3 townships. That is, like Mr. Schlier said, that's 3 townships that we have to go into and try to have a vote on. Plus, we can barely get people to the polls as it is in our little rural areas. So that's where, and I understand about the integrity, but I know you don't interview just one person. We all know that. But it's very costly for a small rural town to do that.
Mr. Duffy.
And in the city of Hayward, we have multiple candidates in the city. So how do we have a special election when you name one candidate versus out of 3? Difficult.
Okay, so, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 4 different towns that I represent, try to represent them equally. And while I'm a town chairman and I understand the cost of elections more than most people do, at the same time, I agree 100% with Ms. Hessel. This is something that should be tried to be left to the electors, as opposed to a chairman. No matter how good your intentions, it would be best to have them do that. I agree with this. I will be voting yes. Thank you.
Mr. Schlender.
So I would say that there's a difference between giving people an option to vote and not having that option available to them. Every election is costly, but I'm telling you, the virtue of an election is something that's embedded in the whole purpose of why we have this country. And if it's too expensive to have, that's That's a byproduct of ability of being represented by the people. If we made it about money, if we made it about convenience, then we would have election one every 100 years. And then we would be set with a government that would never change and never respond. I absolutely support this. I agree to the core of who I am and why we're doing this. And if we have it and they don't show up, at least they had the opportunity to participate. There are people who, there's a lot of sacrifice that went for us to have these districts the way they're drawn. Yes, it's difficult. Try being a tribal member and understanding what districts that we have, these townships that are in place there. I'm telling you, there's the right to vote is the last vestige of sovereignty that we have as a people, and you should let those people have that opportunity to exercise it, whether they come to it or not, whether it costs $10 or $100 or $1,000. Give them an opportunity to decide.
Mr. Hellwig.
I just want to say that I believe that Ms. Hensel's argument was very good for this subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Batcher.
Yeah, just one last thing before we do the vote. So I understand that some people think this is a big inconvenience and might be a little costly, but just keep in mind, each one of us represents approximately 1,100 people in our respective districts. So I just ask when you vote, you're voting for what those 1,100 people might want and not just your own personal feelings.
Thank you. Oh, yes, Mr. Bissonette.
Thanks, Reed. So I get a question. Okay, so I would feel a lot better if I knew all the townships were, like Dale saying, you know, he knows what the cost of an election is. I'm sure all the townships do. Are we kind of, in essence, as a county board, obligating expense to these townships? What if they don't want it? See, I wish I knew that.
Yeah. Well,
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Kinsley.
If a school district has an election and they're the only ones on the school has to pay for it. So if a county has an election for a supervisor, is the county gonna have to pay for that election?
Because the town boards don't make that decision. It's the boundaries that are drawn by that. So the town board argument is kind of irrelevant because they can contribute, but it's the district that is the one that is selecting. So if you live in, I have districts or wards 5 and 6 of the town of Hayward. The town of Hayward and the districts that live where Ms. Hessel was now recently appointed isn't going to vote in my area. So the county is going to take the responsibility of having that special election.
Okay. Okay, so I got a motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Mr. Van Etten. I got that right? Okay. To approve the resolution. And this is just a majority vote, correct, Mr. Hoff? But I think we're going to do a roll call vote, Ms. Fitch,
Okay.
on who supports the current resolution presented.
Mr. Peters. Ms. Pettit. Ms. Pettit.
No.
Mr. Bissonette.
Yes.
Mr. Duffy. No. Ms. Hessel.
Yes.
Mr. Schlueter.
No.
Mr. Betcher.
Yes.
Mr. Paulson.
Yes.
Mr. Schuman.
No.
Mr. Slender.
Yes.
Mr. Hellwig.
Yes.
Mr. Van Etten.
Yes.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Kinsley. Mr. Buckholtz.
No.
We have 5 nay, 10.
Motion carries. Okay. All right, moving on then to 17C. Again, this is a resolution that's sponsored by 2 county board supervisors. And so we will need a 2/3 vote to discuss or take action on. So then I would entertain a motion to,
I make the motion to discuss this resolution.
okay, Mr. Helwig? Okay. Motion by Mr. Schlender, second by Mr. Helwig to discuss Resolution 17C, which talks about the Sawyer County mission statement. Lynn, discussion.
Yes, hopefully this one's a little bit less contentious. Just something that has kind of bothered me since the first time I logged onto the Sawyer County website and looked at the mission statement, and it was blank. It said, to be developed by the county board. And then you look in the county board policy, and it says one of our responsibilities is to collaborate.
We should vote though, Mr. Betcher, before we discuss it. That's kind of the bylaws. Okay, thank you. Nope, that's okay. All right, Lynn, roll call vote, please, to discuss 17C.
Mr. Betcher? Yes. Mr. Schlender?
Yes.
Ms. Hessel? Yes. Mr. Schleter? No. Mr. Schumann?
Yes.
Mr. Helwig?
Yeah.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy? Yes. Mr. Van Etten?
Yes.
Mr. Bissonnette?
Yes.
Ms. Pettit?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Kinsley? Mr. Peters? Yes. Mr. Buckholz?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. All right, 17C, Mr. Betcher.
Sorry about that. I
No,
got a little ahead of myself. Yeah, just, I strongly believe that we need to have a mission statement at the county board. If we don't, and anybody in the world can log on to our website, and, when it's blank, it just, I believe that it shows that we, as a board, we lack vision and direction and leadership, and I think that that's a really bad image to portray. So I just presented this mission statement for discussion.
Motion to approve?
Can I make
You
a
can.
motion to approve? Then
You
I
can.
will. Yes.
Motion by Mr. Betcher. Mr. Helwig?
Second.
Second by Mr. Helwig to approve resolution Sawyer County Board Supervisor adopting mission statement set forth in the Sawyer County Board Policy and Procedure Manual. Is there any further discussion? Yes, sir. Mr. Schlender.
Also a little bit of history. When I was first elected, Mr. Hoff, who also had just recently assumed the position that he had taken, had asked for assistance in drafting something because he wanted not only a mission statement for the county, but he wanted one for the individual boards. And so I, being a young, intrepid lawyer at the time, offered to do that and forgot. So for the fact that Mr. Betcher did this unasked and in such a short time, I absolutely support this resolution. I think the language is great. A mission statement helps guide and puts the parameters for the work that we're trying to accomplish. And it also sets out for people who are looking at us to see where is the foundation or where is the base of where we're coming from and what we're trying to accomplish.
I just want to state that I did say yes as far as discussion, but I don't believe there's really any need. I just want to say yes so that Mr. Betcher had the possibility to state why he did it, but it's a very good job. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Mr. Helwig to approve the resolution 17C. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 18. Other matters for discussion only. Mr. Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just wanted to broach it because we're not supposed to take stuff. We know this. If it's something of, what do they call, a trifling matter, you can't take a steak dinner, but you can take a keychain. I don't know where that ends and where it starts. I don't need another project. I don't need something else to do. I'll take mine back. I'll pay them whatever it's worth. I don't care. But with all the stuff that's gone on, not just in the last 2 months, but historically, because keep in mind, the county got a grant for that building that's out on Double O, rezone the property out there. I don't need to have anybody pointing any fingers at me. So we got some damn hair. I would appreciate some guidance on what to do here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Olson. Mr. Helwig.
I got a couple of things here. I think Mr. Slender used
I want to hear what you got to say.
the word perception earlier. And in our policy, there's the word perception is used far as, I believe it's, it's conflict of interest. You know, my thing is the approval of the person of the job recently in the district attorney's office. I've had some people ask me about that far as, like I say, it says perception. And if anyone has a feeling that there's perception of wrongdoing, then there should be maybe discussion or, you know, brought up, not, you know, I know Mr. Hoff put out a letter to everybody about it, but I just thought maybe it should be brought up. And then just to pop to my next one real quick, you know, it's Don brought up the fact that, you know, the public says a lot about the board. But one of the things the public does a lot is the board did this. The board did that. But a lot of times, the board didn't have any decision on some of these things. And, you know, I've had lots of people come up and say, well, why did the board go and do this, you know, as far as, say, the insurance? And, you know, I had requested a thing put up on the screen saying, this is what they had last year, this is what's coming up and all that, to see that they were still getting treated fairly. And then that didn't happen, and then did the budget, and then everybody and their brother's like, well, why'd the board do this? You know, I don't want to go and say, well, Mr. Hoff did that, so, you know, well, you know, that's what happens. We have to take care of things, and sometimes we can't keep everybody happy. You know,
Thank
it's
you.
just the way
Thank
it
you,
goes.
Mr. Helwig.
So, but I don't, like I say, I don't like the fact that the public says the board, why'd they do that? But yet we, as the board, don't make some of these decisions.
Okay. Mr. Slender.
Thank you.
So I kind of, following Mr. Olson's discussion point about the hat, I had no idea what that was. What does constitute as a gift, right? Because I don't know who gave that. Thankfully or unthankfully or embarrassingly, it was too small for my head, so I can't wear it outside anyway. I don't know, it's just an acknowledgement, because there's other people who say thank you for, you know, for the things that we do. Some people do say thank you. And you know, there's no steak dinner, there's no anything other than just an expression of gratitude. And so, you know, I'm thankful for the Berkey being here. I know that's controversial, and maybe they don't want to use oil products or something, whatever that was with whatever the announcement was. But, you know, an unsolicited thing sent to me in the mail, I don't know if that, I don't know what that is, but yeah, so.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything else? Oh, yeah. Ms.
I'm
Pettit.
online. Wait,
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Pettit.
Tweet, I could see you shutting down everything, so, all right, I'll make this quick. Now, I hope you gentlemen and the newly appointed Ms. Hessel, that we are going to debate, converse, as much as we did on this courthouse in the addition for Health and Human Services, our opiate and our alcoholic programs, and what needs to be done there. Because if I'm issuing, we're going to issue debt on that side with the bonds. We better be coming back to the other side and have the programs available, or you're just putting forward a clearinghouse and putting them through, and we have no programs, no rehabs, no nothing. And that's where my issue stands with it. I would never say no to the police safety and no to the veteran. Absolutely not. It was the matter of the fact of what was going on, and we did not have a vote on it. First, we were told we were voting on it. Then we got told another board made the decision for us. If I would have gotten the reception that Ms. Hessel got coming in today and the information, I would have been way ahead of the game. I did not get any of that information. My thing is here is that you guys are worried about what HHS is spending on for mental health or individuals in Winnebago. If you know what a 5115 is, that individual, the video of what Mr. Schlender showed was that of the officers bringing an individual out of the courtroom. We did not see what happened. And that was a normal scenario that I've seen 100 times. But the point being is that person is mentally ill. That is where I'm going with this. For our safety and the safety of our loved ones in this community, we have an opium epidemic, mental illness, and alcohol abuse and addiction. If we do not get that under control, gentlemen, you will see that played out in our courtroom 100 times over. So I hope everybody gets on board.
Thank you, Ms. Pettit. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.